Thank you for joining us today. My name is Karen Masulo, and I'll be your moderator along with Bill Baker from Firestorm. This is our June 20th Crisis Coach session, and we're going to talk a little bit about what the most successful programs are doing right. As always, we ask you to join us on social media and engage in conversation. And Cheyenne, if you'll go forward for me, we'd like you to join us on Twitter on Firestorm Solutions on Facebook. We are continuity experts on our YouTube channel, and Firestorm Solutions on LinkedIn. We're also on Instagram. Just look for us, Crisis Communications and Firestorm. This webinar is not complete without the accompanying oral comments and discussion. Remember that any work product provided by Firestorm should be read in conjunction with all guidance given by national, regional, and local authorities, as well as your organization's personal counsel. Moreover, the information given and comments made in this webinar should not be interpreted as legal advice or legal opinion. You know us, we're Firestorm, and Firestorm transforms crisis into value. Since 2005, we've assisted clients in transforming crises of all types, some of the most high-profile crises in the country, and most complex events by combining best practice consulting with proven crisis management expertise using our predict, plan, perform methodology. Since January of 2018, Firestorm now is across 6 key verticals: crisis and risk solutions, professional services solutions, intelligence solutions, and artificial intelligence solutions, security solutions, and today we have a representative with us from our people and analytical solutions divisions. I'd like to introduce you to our presenter, Cheyene Marling. If you're part of the business continuity community, you already know Cheyene. She is our Executive Vice President for People Solutions and Program Analytics and has more than 20 years of highly specialized experience in the business continuity field. I want to invite you as well to look for Cheyene on our website. She is always doing something really exciting in the industry, and you can see that on our events calendar coming up in July. Cheyene is going to be a featured instructor for the MIT Special Course on Crisis Management and Business Continuity, and she's going to instruct on business continuity management trends, and that will be on the MIT campus in Cambridge, July 23rd through 27th. So it's a long trip for Cheyene. Cheyene, would you like to introduce your topic today and take it from here?
Sure, of course. Thank you so much, Karen. Welcome, everyone, to today's webinar. Of course, today we're going to be speaking about what are the most successful programs doing right, looking at our data analysis that we've been gathering for many years now, and looking at the trends in business continuity, how the profession has evolved, but more importantly, what are some of the differentiating factors between a very mature program and an immature program. First of all, the current slide, I want to showcase the results from the registration questions, which certainly tie into today's discussion, and looking at how individuals are, how they're considering their business continuity program, and of course, what they would like to do to improve the culture of their program as well. I'm going to jump right into today's agenda. And of course, we're going to first talk about the evolution of resiliency. The industry has changed so much since I got into the profession over 20 years ago. And I do want to highlight that I entered the profession back in 1998 before Y2K, well, during Y2K planning. And as a recruiter, I was so enthralled and captivated by what individuals were doing in the industry and talking to professionals on how passionate they were about their job. Certainly more interesting to talk to than Java programmers. So I was immediately captivated and decided to dedicate my time to business continuity planning professionals. In today's agenda, we're going to talk again about program maturity, what differentiates between mature and immature programs, looking at how to strategically plan for your program moving forward because the industry is continuing to evolve, and of course, next steps in moving forward. So of course, the evolution of the industry has changed so much. I've been in this industry since 1998. And back then, my first conference was DRJ, and it was Hurricane Floyd. And I remember the topic was very much focused around disaster recovery. And individuals in their career were, let's say, for example, director of disaster recovery, and they were very focused on data center recovery, network recovery. But now we're certainly doing much, much more than that. You see the transition from business continuity. We hear the term resiliency. And right now, I think we're certainly at the point where there's a lot of evolution within our profession. And what are the next steps? So as a professional, you need to look at how you evolve your program as well as evolve your skill set and marketability. Our data has certainly indicated a trend between migrating from information technology to risk management, operations, or security. I do want to emphasize that depending on your industry, depending on your organization, you will have your program reporting into a different department. It's different for each organization, and you need to make sure that you position your program for maximum visibility. It may be IT, it may be risk management, operations, security, health and safety, crisis management, but overall, the trend throughout the industry is we're seeing going from IT to risk, operations, security. There's certainly an increased executive visibility with the program. You as a professional are getting scrutinized more and more by executives on, not only creating the program, but is it going to work during an event? We are also seeing certainly a dedication to crisis management and incident response. I think our first job that was 100% focused on crisis management within corporate, not public sector, but with the corporate environment, was back with a very large petroleum organization back in 2008, where we placed a North American manager for crisis management. And we're seeing more and more of that, where they have someone dedicated just to crisis management within their company. The program is certainly more integrated across the entire organization, meaning that it's very integrated within different components of risk management, maybe cyber resiliency. So the industry has changed so much back from when I started in the industry back in 1998, and it's going to continue to evolve. And I should also mention that individuals getting into the industry or entering our profession are not just IT data center, technology focused. We have professionals coming into the industry from risk management, from operations, from finance, from being a firefighter, audit, governance. And these individuals coming into the industry are challenging the way we look at business continuity planning. So very, very exciting of how the industry has evolved over the years. Some of the trending that we have from a reporting structure, as you can see, information technology over the years from 2016, where the program, the BCM program reporting to has certainly changed from 27% back in 2009 to 18% in 2017, where risk management has increased. Our program into risk management from 11% in 2009 to 21% in 2017. So very interesting to look at the report, at the change throughout the many years we've been collecting the data. Where the program is reporting to from a program sponsor. Again, there is still a heavy emphasis on the CIO or CTO, having that individual be positioned as the program sponsor. But you can also see that the Chief Risk Officer has increased from 3% to 11% over the years from 2009 to 2017. So again, very important to look at the trending aspect. We still, and I do see companies that will have the program report into risk management, but the sponsor is still the CIO and CTO. So again, different for each and every organization, but it's interesting to see how the industry has changed over the years. Level of separation. So the person who's managing the program is the sponsor. Where are they positioned from a level of separation from the executive committee? This has not changed drastically over the years. I think the biggest change has been the one level of separation from executive committee, which has changed from 29% to 34%. But overall, it's remained consistent on where that sponsor is positioned as far as level of separation from the executive committee. Now, of course, many of you are doing much, much more than business continuity planning. I think it's safe to say that you're doing at least a combination of perhaps 4 to 5 disciplines within your program. And when I say disciplines, that means risk management, cyber resiliency, So let's just take a look, and this is always fun to do in person versus doing a webinar, but you're doing much, much more than business continuity. So in our data, when someone takes the study, we ask them what is included within their program. What are they managing? What are they delivering? What are they what's really focused within their program? What are they doing? 93%, of course, indicated that they're doing business continuity planning. But then, oops, I stepped forward. Crisis management has increased over the years, and that includes crisis communications, crisis management, media crisis management. Then you look at risk management, operational risk management, third-party risk management has increased over the years. Enterprise risk management, governance, risk compliance, the insurance component is always a little bit less. But again, you're doing much more than just business continuity planning. We have pandemic planning. 56% of the respondents include that as a part of their program. Then you have emergency management. Then you have disaster recovery, supplier resiliency. We added that component to our study last year because we see more and more companies looking at supplier resiliency. Compliance. We have IT is maybe perhaps a component of your program. Physical security, information security, audit, facilities, records management, environmental health and safety, occupation. We have environmental health and safety, environmental, asset protection, succession planning, executive protection, cybersecurity. I think the other one was just other 3%. So look at this. Look at everything that you're doing. You're doing much, much more than just business continuity planning. And I love highlighting this because when I first got into the industry and when we changed to that magical year of 2000, I had so many people calling me worried that they'd be out of a job because they planned so well for 2000 that there was not a major incident. They thought they'd be out of a job. Look at where we've come to today. All the different components that are part of the program planning process. I think it's very safe to say that the industry is not going away. It's going to continue to evolve. But as a professional within this industry, this little bubble graph right here is really important to look at because you can take your career in so many different directions. And it's also important to look at because, you know, companies who are looking to create openings, as a hiring manager, perhaps if you can't get your 3 new hires that you want and you only get 1, if your program encompasses many disciplines, of course you're going to combine different disciplines within that 1 hire if you cannot get 3. So, you know, looking at what your program encompasses within the company and making sure that it's enterprise driven is so very important. And I'm just really thrilled that we've come this far over the 20 years I've been doing this. Now, what's program maturity? We have been gathering information on program maturity going back to 2009. Actually, our compensation study was the first study that we started back in 2001. And we just finished our 16th year of assessing compensations within the industry. But from that data assessment, from that very beginning of study, we have evolved from a data collection standpoint. And companies came to us and said, it's great that you're gathering information on compensations, but I want to know where other companies position their program. I want to know the budget that other companies have for their program. I want to know dedicated staff. So that's where our studies have evolved and evolved and evolved. And now today we're thrilled to say we have actually 7 different studies throughout the year. This particular presentation, I'm only going to focus on one of those studies and really focus on program maturity and what defines program maturity within the industry. And when someone does take our study, and actually we've changed this for all of our studies, they do rate their program maturity. It's a self-rating. So it's very important to note that all of these graphs that we're going to talk about in today's webinar is based on the self-rating. However, if anyone takes any one of our studies, the critical supplier study, the event impact management, what have you, at the very end of the study, they get a scoring on how they scored throughout taking the study. So even though that you can self-rate your program in the beginning, you do get a score at the end of the study on how you compare to your peers from a program maturity standpoint. One thing I want to point out on this particular graph is if you look at the bar graph, there is an incredible dip in the very mature respondents. I wonder if you can see my mouse here, but the very mature program, those who indicated a very mature self-rating program back in 2010, only 4% of respondents consider their program very mature in 2010. I think that has a lot to say about the economy, the recession, and professionals in the industry were not getting the budget, they were not getting dedicated headcount, and there wasn't the focus on the planning efforts, right? So that it's interesting to see how we have that substantial dip in 2010 from a very, very mature. Going to the next slide here. So of course, today's discussion, we're going to focus on these three pinnacles within what defines program maturity. In the very beginning, you have to build a solid foundation. If you don't have that solid foundation, you're not going to get your program up and running, or you could find yourself having to go back and create that foundation for your program. So very, very critical in the very beginning to build that solid foundation, or go back and rebuild it and reassess it. Once you build your solid foundation, we find that the most mature programs are continuously assessing their program. They're exercising their plans, and they're looking for those potential risks, those potential weaknesses, vulnerabilities within their program. And those that, and this is the one piece that I think as an industry we're really still struggling with, but once you build your foundation and you're assessing your program, really strive for continuous improvement. And that ties into the standards and the metrics. But as a profession, I think that's the one component that even the most mature programs do tend to, there is some improvement needed there, definitely. So looking at the solid foundation, you need that executive commitment. You need to make sure that the program is integrated within the corporate culture. And one thing I should say about corporate culture, cultures are different, right? So you can't assume that you can create one program for one financial company and take that same program and duplicate with another financial organization. So cultures are different, risk tolerance. So looking at from a program planning perspective as a professional, you need to make sure that you not only integrate the program within the corporate culture, but make sure that that program is really going to work for that corporate culture. Solid foundation, you need to make sure that you have very highly visible reporting structures. So making sure that you have the program positioned from a program department standpoint, and make sure that you have a sponsor, program sponsor that sponsors highly visible and committed to the planning process. And once looking at hiring the top talent as well, you're not going to have or continually to have a great program unless you make sure that you invest and you continue to grow and challenge and really develop your top talent personnel within your organization. So critical. Another thing with solid foundation is making sure that you integrate your program across the entire organization, across all the different company functions and pieces of the company. Make sure that it is very well integrated throughout the entire organization. So executive commitment, we found in our most recent study that there's certainly a differential between mature and immature programs. So executive boards who have adopted a mission statement, a vision statement, or policy statement for the BCM program, you can see that the most mature programs are certainly more focused in making sure that they have a mission, vision, policy statement for their BCM program compared to their immature study respondents, as well as board of directors receiving an annual program update shared or giving more frequent updates. You can see that 92% of the mature programs are providing very frequent annual basis updates to their board of directors, where immature is 65%. The one piece that we can still improve upon, regardless of program maturity, is stakeholders being identified, validated, and involved. 37% of mature programs. So there's an area for improvement versus the 9% for immature programs. This is an interesting slide. So again, really integrating your program across the company culture. You can see here that 70% of mature programs, their program is a part of the corporate culture. If you see on the far left, for all respondents or average programs, 40% indicated that it really depends on the executive commitment. So they're still struggling with that executive commitment, and sometimes, the value's there and sometimes it's not. Those who have very immature programs, they indicate that there's certainly a lack of interest in assessing the program's value to the organization. So again, that company culture is a very, very solid foundation that needs to be built in the very beginning, and it needs to be continued throughout the process. Now look at a position program, making sure that your program is positioned for maximum visibility. I only included, for the department owner on the left graph, I only included the top respondents, the top departments based on percentage of respondents. So you have here, of course, business continuity, corporate offices, IT, what have you. And you can certainly see that there is an increased 21 to 23, very, very slight. But again, looking at the immature programs, 22% will tend to have it positioned in IT, and only 15% for the very mature programs. Again, I always want to emphasize, it comes down to what's going to make most sense for your organization. So this is just overall all study respondents, regardless of the industry that they're in. And we do, by the way, we do have industry peer group reports that we published. We published 22 last year based on industry. So all this data is going to change based on the industry that you're in. We do have a follow-up question on, do you believe your program is positioned for maximum visibility? You can see the red is strongly disagree and the green is strongly agree. And of course, corporate executive offices get a high rating, business continuity offices get a high rating, risk management also receives a high rating. IT really struggles in getting that, agreeing that the program is positioned for maximum visibility. Who's the dedicated program sponsor? Again, you can see that predominantly it's still the CIO, CTO, but you can also see that the chief risk officer, 8% of the immature programs have the program reporting into the CRO, or 12% for the very mature programs. But again, IT, CIO, CTO, I see a lot of my companies will have the program position in operations or risk management, but the program sponsor is still that CIO, CTO. And again, looking at the level of separation from executive management, still heavily, 0 to 1% level of separation, but there's a distinguishing factor of that one level of separation. You can see that it's 13% for immature programs, but 30% for the most mature programs. And then going to the next slide here, excuse me. Let's see, my mouse isn't cooperating, hold on. Okay, so looking at making sure that you're hiring the top talent within your industry. This is an interesting, compelling graph because you're not only attracting and hiring, but making sure that you're developing and retaining the top talent. So looking at just the personnel that you're hiring, but also the leadership. So the most mature programs, they have their leadership more than 8 years experience, where the immature programs, 0% will have, so looking at right here, immature programs, only 27% will have their leadership with more than 8 years experience. And then looking at the personnel who are involved in your program planning process, again, the most mature programs will tend to get more of those experienced personnel. It's also important to make sure that the competencies are defined and you have specialized training programs within your organization for your personnel, and you're providing that mentoring, coaching, and tutorship within your organization for your personnel. That's one area that, again, looking at the training for programs or training of specialized programs for personnel, that's still an area that even the most mature programs can improve upon, because only 47% of mature programs really have that specialized training, where only 23% of the very immature programs do. So again, not only looking to hire the top talent, but making sure that you're investing and developing your top talent as well. Now, these graphs are small, I understand that, but I want you to look at the color within these graphs, okay? So the one on the left, again, looking at how integrated your program is across the entire organization. So the left graph is this very chart for immature study respondents, immature programs, and you can see all the red. The red indicates no integration, and then you go from red to green, which is complete integration. On the right side, you can see that there's definitely a lot more green, meaning that those mature programs feel that their program is better integrated across all these different company components. The one thing that we can still focus and still improve upon within the industry, if you can see on this right chart, the chart on the right side, we can still improve on change management. We can still improve our program with executive protection. We can still look at integrating with public agencies better. So if there's an event that occurs, do you have your public agencies, a contact person integrated within your program? Do you include them in your exercise process? Also looking at succession planning. That's an area of improvement. Also, more importantly, what we're seeing more and more is a third-party critical supplier. Are you including them as a part of your exercises? Do you even know about their program? So that's an area that's certainly definitely a level of where we can improve upon across the entire industry. Now, once you build your solid foundation, are you really assessing the program, looking for those vulnerabilities, looking for those weaknesses? So are you doing the BIA risk assessment? Are you exercising your plans? And not only exercising, but do you really vary your exercises? Are you doing the internal or external audit? And once you find your areas of improvement, do you really leverage those areas? And are you looking again at the public agency contacts, the critical third-party suppliers? Are you really incorporating them and assessing their programs as a potential weakness or vulnerability for your own program? So looking here, the first slide from a BIA perspective, we have on the left side is very immature. So those respondents who indicated their program is very immature. On the right side, we have very mature study respondents. The red is critical. So looking at your critical business functions, the blue is non-critical. Now, overall, you can see that the majority, regardless of maturity, are conducting a BIA on an annual basis. So very mature, or very immature, excuse me, and very mature, that tends to be the norm. However, looking at very immature, look at how many, the percentage of response that never do a BIA for critical or non-critical. That's very important to note. So again, even if you create a program, if you're not really assessing it, you're not really continuously to improve upon it. Looking at exercising your plans as well. So not just going through the exercise process, but also looking at different scenarios to really, really look for those true vulnerabilities, true weaknesses within your program. I'm going to first highlight the graph on the bottom left. The dark red is mission critical IT. The lighter red is mission critical business. Then you have the beige mission critical third parties. And you can see that this is certainly left out because here we have on the left side, very immature, on the right side, very mature. And look at how many very immature study response never exercise their plan. More than 50% never exercise for mission critical third parties. That's a huge vulnerability. Although the trend is still annual, regardless of your program maturity rating, most companies are doing an annual type of exercise. But you can see that there tends to still be a higher emphasis on the mission critical IT, the mission critical business, less of a focus on the mission critical third parties, less critical IT, which is in dark green, and the less critical business, which is in light green. So again, very important to note that differentiating factor. On the top right, it's important to really test your program and look for multiple ways to get those potential risks, identify those potential vulnerabilities, excuse me. And you can see that the blue is very immature and the green is very mature. And most of the immature respondents, if they are exercising their program, they're focused on crisis management tabletop, they're focused on the telephone cascade call tree exercise, and they're focused on the walkthroughs. So that tends to be their area of focus. Very few of them are doing the surprise or live tests to really test that true vulnerability. You can see that the very mature respondents, the green, are doing quite a little bit of everything, right? And they're doing more than the very immature counterparts. Internal, external audit. This is definitely an area that we can improve upon. So the blue is the external audit and the green is the internal audit. And you can see certainly the very mature respondents on the right, they're definitely doing external, internal audits on an annual basis. But of course, there's still that focus on the internal audit versus external audit. And look here, close to 60% of the very immature programs never conduct an external audit. And shortly thereafter, internal audit, never, ever done. So very important to take a look at from an auditing perspective where you stand. Taking advantage of really the lessons learned and really taking that information to really advance the program. You can see here that 46% of the very mature programs really take that information and make it a point to improve the business continuity program performance, where the very immature programs, 30% do really nothing to advance the program from the lessons learned. Now, once you have built your foundation and you're assessing your program for the risk, weaknesses, potential vulnerabilities, it's really crucial then to make sure that you are striving for continuous improvement. You know, do you have the controls in place? Are you looking at your organization from a change management? It was we mentioned in one of our slides from integration across the company culture. Change management was one of the areas that we kind of struggle as a profession. So making sure that you have that continuous improvement in place and you're tracking potential changes across your organization and incorporating that in your program. Establishing metrics to really assess your program's effectiveness. And certification, of course, that's really becoming a trend. And we've been tracking different certifications within the industry. And of course, that's changed so many. I think our study has over, oh my gosh, probably 40 different certifications that we've added. And there's a lot of international. There's some that are just for Hong Kong. There are some that are just for Singapore. There are some that are just for, I think, Colombia. So we have all these different certifications included in the study. But, you know, fortunately with ISO, we're starting to solidify and embrace, you know, a couple, you know, 5 or 6 key certifications that we're seeing more predominant within the profession. And that also changes depending on the focus of your program and if you have information security as a part of your program, for example. So looking at the different disciplines within your program is certainly going to drive the certification that you look at to make sure that you have those continuous improvement. So the mature programs, of course, you know, mature programs are not looking at business continuity planning as a project. Mature programs are looking at business continuity as a program, as a continuum. So 90% of the most mature programs consider business continuity program as a continuing program. It doesn't have an end date. So when you think of project has an end date. And you're looking at the immature programs, you know, again, the focus is still as a continuum, and that's good. That's good to see. But you're still seeing 24% of the immature programs are looking as a project. Perhaps they're looking at to meet an audit, or perhaps they're looking at it and they get the program established, but they're not assessing their program. They're not continuously assessing the maturity of the program and advancing the program. Looking at the table at the bottom right here, the frequency of reviewing your program maturity. So once you've established your program, are you really taking the time to review that your program is mature? How can you improve upon your program? How can you make it that much better? So on an annual basis, you can see that 51% of the mature programs do just that. Some of them do on a quarterly basis. 15% of the most mature programs assess their program maturity on a quarterly basis. So overall, as an annual, it's good to see, but there's still very much areas for improvement on this as well. You can see that the most immature programs, 37%, they assess their program maturity as needed or irregular. So again, that area of improvement of making sure that you're continuously improving upon your program is so crucial. So looking at controls to demonstrate ROI, return on investment. So are you really taking the time to assess your program's effectiveness and establishing controls? You can see here on the far left that 79% of the most mature programs, they have, you know, the financial executives are aware that BCM resiliency planning is prudent management issue, not a revenue generation initiative. And that's an important distinguishing factor, because if you have a program, you need to look at it as a part of the company culture. You have, again, this chart shows that 61% of immature programs, they consider cost of doing nothing versus potential impacts. Still, at the same time, you also need to look at, you know, all respondents and where they fall as well. Here we have 46% of the most mature programs. BCM is a part of the executive annual performance objectives. I do want to note that this graph exceeds 100% due to multiple selections. So when someone does answer this question within the study, of course, they can select multiple criteria. But again, there's certainly a differentiating factor between the immature and the mature programs. Looking at the next slide here, looking at current status, metrics implementation to determine program effectiveness. Here, immature programs, 53% have no metrics implemented at all to really assess their program effectiveness or success. You can see that the most mature programs, 22%, metrics are part of the decision-making process for continual improvement. So again, taking a look at, and this I think we do need to improve upon as an industry. We need to take a look at making sure that we're establishing metrics, but not only that, what type of metrics are we incorporating to really determine the success of our program? You can see on the bottom left that 72% of immature programs, if they're using any type of metrics, they're using simple indicators. Again, this is a huge area for improvement. 21% of the most mature programs are using complex indicators. And again, this does exceed 100% because companies can, or respondents can select multiple selections as they take part in the study, because you could have multiple different indicators to assess the success of deploying your program. So again, this is an area certainly that we need to improve upon as an industry. When you're looking at certification of your program, this is not certification as you as a professional, it's not the DRI or BCI certification, but considering looking at the program certification. And this is a trend that we've been tracking for over 5 years. There hasn't been a lot of change, and I really attribute that to the fact that as there's been a change of so many standards out there and all the different country standards. And I think right now, we're at a turning point where, most organizations are rallying behind the ISO 22301. We also have the ISO 27001 information security, the ISO 9001 quality management, and the ISO 22316 organizational resilience. Those tend to be the predominant ones that companies will look at from a certification standpoint for their program. But again, I think this particular graph is really going to change over time, because I'm hearing more and more from my companies, my clients, that they are really looking at, they may not be currently certified, but they're looking to become certified in a standard in the coming years. And I get this question quite frequently. What are other companies doing from a standard? Are they mirroring their program to standard? And if so, which standard are they mirroring their program to? And if they're certified, which standard are they certified in? But still, there's certainly a differentiating between 21% of the study respondents with mature programs are currently certified in the standard. And those same certifications, or standards, those standards I just mentioned, tend to be the most popular, predominant standards to get certified in. And then only 7% of the immature programs are currently certified in a standard. And I'll go to the next slide here. Oops, there we go. So wrap up in a couple slides so we leave time for questions. But as you look at your program, and as I mentioned throughout this organization, you need to make sure that you're building that foundation, you're assessing your program, you're putting metrics in place to make sure that you're continuously assessing the effectiveness of your program and making continuous improvement. But you need to really make sure that you're looking at what makes sense for your organization. And this changes within all the different industries out there. So what makes sense for a particular financial institution may be different for another financial company, may be different from manufacturing or telecommunications, which is why we actually do these reports we have 22 different reports that are customized by industry and revenue. So not only looking at the industry as a whole and what's changing with the future, but making sure that you continuously assess your program, your organization, what makes sense to continue to have that executive attention, making sure that you are considering the company culture and you are fostering that company culture and keeping it as a very key component of that foundation of your program. Never, ever, ever be complacent. Never be complacent. The industry has changed so much. As we can, looking back at that bubble graph, think about everything you're doing. I don't think you could afford to be complacent. There's so much activity going on. really take advantage of that enterprise-driven approach of your program. We're so very fortunate that we're not siloed in just, data center, network recovery. We're doing so much more than that. But take advantage of and look at areas of improvement in that integration company culture graph, how you can really drive not only the executive commitment, but really driving it across the entire organization. And think outside the norm. Business continuity is not, black and white. There's a lot of gray in what we do. And thinking outside the box, I always like to use the bread truck. If anyone's ever heard me give a presentation, I always use it. So forgive me for just a moment to emphasize this. But think about a bread truck that's stuck under a bridge. And all these engineers are coming out and they're trying to think, how can we get this bread truck unstuck? It's stuck. How can we get it unstuck? And this little kid comes by with a little bicycle, and he has, again, simple, just let the air out of the tires. So sometimes we get so caught up in what we do as a profession, but we need to think outside the box. And sometimes it can be a simplistic solution to a very complex problem. Be a champion. Be passionate about what you're doing within your program planning process. If you're not passionate about what you're doing, how do you expect to get someone else in your organization excited about business continuity planning? So being passionate, really being a champion. And when I say champion, companies are looking for leaders in the profession, someone who's going to drive their program and be a champion for their program. If you're a leader in the profession within, giving presentations and being published, if you're a leader in the profession, companies are going to expect that you're going to be a champion for their program. You're going to be a champion within their organization. And that's really going to drive the program effectiveness, the program maturity. So again, going back to that higher top talent, that doesn't only contribute to the management level, but at every stage of your career, be a champion, be passionate about what you're doing, because that's going to be a big driving component, certainly very important driving program, a component to your program effectiveness. And one other story I like to say here is that it also comes down to your position title. So we do see certainly a transition away from disaster recovery to resiliency planning, business continuity, risk those other terms, because disaster recovery, that has a lot to say about what you do within the organization. And I think about one presentation I gave, this lady said, oh my God, I go down the hallway and the people comment, watch out, here comes a disaster recovery professional. So your job title, the title of your program, it does create this message across the entire organization. So definitely want to make sure that you review that as well. Always continue to evolve your program. Back in the day, the term was disaster recovery. What's going to be the new term tomorrow? Like I mentioned, I think right now we're at a point where we have certainly a lot of evolution in what we're doing, how we're approaching business continuity with all these new professionals coming into the industry from different previous careers. So the methods of how we're developing programs, it's being challenged. And you need to look at how you're going to make an impact, not to your program. Again, any level you make an impact to your program, any level, not just at management, but coming in as an entry level, hire into your company. How do you make an impact to your program? How do you advance that program maturity within your organization? How is your program viewed? How is it going to be viewed in the future? You cannot afford to be complacent and assuming that you're always going to have that executive support. Your executive sponsor may retire. They may move on to another organization. And then as a professional, you have a very big sales component, right? And making sure that you keep that executive commitment. You embrace that executive commitment. So even though your program may get a high view rating today, that could change overnight. So always being prepared. Never, ever be complacent with how your program is positioned within the company and how it's being viewed. So what's next, of course, you can always go to the website and download. We have quite a bit of information there. I can certainly speak to all the different reports that we have available. And as I mentioned throughout this presentation, these graphs, all these graphs that you saw today, change based on your industry, based on the size of your organization. So this, of course, today I highlighted as an industry where we are, regardless of if you're financial or manufacturing. So certainly something to take it for future consideration on how you stack up to your particular industry that you operate in. And of course, you want to make sure that you register for next month's session. Always don't forget to sign up for our weekly newsletter as well. There's a lot of great information out there. And I just want to say that, and this is just me coming from a personal perspective, but I've been under the Firestorm umbrella since January, and an incredible amount of information, and kudos to Karen and her team. She puts out a lot of great information. So that newsletter is phenomenal. So you want to make sure that you don't miss that. As I mentioned, we have a lot of information, and we're still in transition mode. So the information that's being posted is changing frequently, and we have more and new reports coming out all the time. And again, kudos to Karen and her team, because she's done a lot in really repositioning how the reports look and so forth. So a lot of great information coming out. And make sure that we have, share the formula. We are really, as a company, we're very, very focused on, we have a solution to school violence, and here's the solution. And you can get the information, download and share at firestorm.com/formula. So make sure taking a look at how we can, as a profession, and everyone as a whole, not just within the business continuity field, but I even have quite a bit of family members who are in high school, and my son's going into high school next year. So share the formula is very close to my heart, and I encourage everyone to go download and share, because it's crucial to make sure that we're, we have the solution for the school violence to fight it, to counteract it, but we need to share it. Nothing gets done without sharing it. Here we come to the question slide. I think I've left some time, quite a bit of time actually, for questions. And if there's something that you want to contact me directly, there's my contact information. Please, I encourage you to give me a call or email me if you have any questions on today's presentation. And I guess, Karen or Bill, I turn it back to you for potential questions or next steps.
Well, thank you so much, Cheyenne. And these sessions are a little bit shorter. They're 45-minute sessions, so you actually timed it as perfectly as you possibly could.
Oh, good.
I've asked folks if there were any questions throughout the session. I think you covered everything so well. There are none today. You can reach Cheyenne at Marling@firestorm.com, certainly, if you have anything you would like to ask her about, especially the custom reports and data she shared with us today. Cheyenne, I always learn something from the data you share, so thank you so much. As the profession matures, great leadership like yours allows it to mature alongside, and data is critical to that growth. So thank you so much today. Everyone, thank you for joining us. A recording will be on our on our YouTube channel shortly. You'll receive a link in the follow-up email from GoToWebinar. As always, we're going to produce a transcript of the session and summarize it in an article for you next week or the week after. And we can only share that with you if, as Cheyenne asked, you sign up for our newsletter or at least look at our blog. So thank you, everyone. Thank you, Cheyenne. Thank you, Bill Baker, for moderating in the background. And that will end our session for today. Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.